So hey guys, so I'm just back from my guitar class. I'm still very bad at it. I have started just 1 month back, and my hands are starting to pain. But yeah, I'm learning, and let's see how that goes. Well, so today's video, I wanted to talk about the novel that I mentioned in my last video, which I have been writing consistently, and which has almost 40,000 words in it right now. So my writing process has always been kind of like a pantser where I don't outline or plot my story. I go by chapter wise and then I just start writing what comes to my mind at that point of time. Although I have a basic idea of what the entire story is about, where is it going, and maybe like 4 or 5 important scenes that I want to be included in the manuscript, a name to the novel that I'm writing, although I have another name. Let's call it Moonlight for now. And for Moonlight, I had this idea maybe like 4 years back, but I did not continue writing until last month. So before that I had around like 11 to 12 chapters maybe. So right now it has like around 16 chapters, and I haven't reread it in a very long time. So even when I started to continue writing it, I did not go back to read the previous chapters, and I just went with what I had in my memory. And right now I'm thinking about coming up with a plot or outline for the story, because for my other two stories, which are just in the idea level, I have already started plotting for one of the stories. When I started plotting for the stories, I really liked that I had a lot of things to think about. Like, I was able to zoom out and then think about each character or the entire storyline, and then not just the plot but also how the character arcs and the story arcs has to move. And it gave me an idea, maybe I should do that with Moonlight as well, because like Moonlight, although I'm very proud of the story so far, I feel like I still haven't discovered the entire theme of the story. So it has supernatural elements in it, but it is a very slow reveal, and it is not a kind of a novel where the world building starts very early on. Like I said, I have written almost around 16 chapters, and still there is no big reveal of the fantasy or the supernatural elements. There are hints. So like I said, like I want to do a plot, and I also want to create an outline to see how many words I am expecting. Maybe I can't get the word count down right now, but I really want to at least have an outline of how many chapters I'm planning, how is the storyline going to flow, and also to just get into the mind of the different characters and then see if they are consistent, if the voice of the characters is consistent throughout the novel so far. Basically, I didn't want to revisit the chapters that I have written earlier, because I just wanted to finish the first draft and then do revision as a separate thing. But right now, I just want to remind myself what I have written, and is there any clues that I have to, or any open threads that I have left that I want to close up in the remaining chapters. So yeah, that is the plan for this week. So I'm going to be rereading chapters, and then I'm going to be coming up with an outline, maybe jot down some character arcs, and then just do a bit of, get into the world of my book, immerse myself into the world of my book more. So let's see how that goes. And yeah, reading update, I'm currently reading Priory of the Orange Tree. It's really interesting, and I have to say, Pride of the Orange Tree is a fantasy book where the world building is very nice, and Shamantha Shannon has thought out every little detail, and that is what really inspires me. When it comes to my writing, I know my strengths and weaknesses a little bit, where I write emotions and pacing very well, but when it comes to descriptions, it's just that I get bored or I get sucked up into research a lot, and then I overthink a lot. So detailing and descriptions were something that I have to work on. And when I started reading the Prairie of the Orange Tree, it, apart from the storyline, apart from the world building, I really liked the way it is detailed, and it is not lazy. And yeah, I'm just gathering more and more inspiration. So if any of you guys who are watching this video have some good novels to recommend which might inspire me for my novel, or generally for my writing, then please do let me know. Or if you have read for Prayer with the Orange Tree, then what are your thoughts, then also let me know. So yeah, I'm going to start plotting, and let's see where this week takes me, and then I'll get back after my writing session. So I'm back from my break, and like I said, I'm going to read all of my previous chapters that I have written so far. So the funny thing is, I was thinking about plotting the entire storyline chapter by chapter, but right now, with how I have been writing this book, I want to kind of go with the flow, as well as I also want to have an outline, if that makes any sense. So for example, I have like I said, I have 3 or 4 things that I know that I want in the book, definitely in the book. So I'm going to maybe outline those scenes a bit, but as for the entire plot, I'm going to try to keep it as vague as possible, but also have like a skeleton, if you know what I mean. So I might have something written down like, I want these things to happen, and I want the reveal of certain incident to be like this, I want the inciting incident to be at this point, and things like that. But what I would want in each chapter, I might write as we go. But let's see. I mean, once I sit down to write, it might completely change. I might come up with the entire storyline. So I don't know what is gonna happen. So as for this exercise, I know there are a lot of writing softwares out there which will give you guidelines and stuff like that, but I'm going to use a plain old Excel sheet and maybe some writing guidelines and writing advice that I picked up along the way, like what are the questions that you should have in mind when you are designing your character arc, or when you're designing your story arc, and how the pacing should be. I mean, pacing, I don't think I need to worry about right now, but I need to really figure out what my character arcs and then what their backstories are, because right now the main character is very vague. I wouldn't say vague, but I know even my first story was mostly angst. It was a contemporary romance, but it was also mostly angst. And I feel like this second story is also becoming more and more angsty. As much as I like to write the genre and people have appreciated it and they are able to resonate with it, but I also want to give some depth to this character other than being someone who constantly runs into bad things or unfortunate things. So yeah, I don't want it to be too heavy. I know there are some light elements here, but I feel like it could be even more, a bit of a variety, while not deviating from a bit of a serious tone that the whole book is gonna have. But yeah, let's see how it goes. And right now, first things first, I'm going to play around with only one of the software, which is called Ellipsis. I know many people are using Scrivener for their writing or drafting. I'm just going to try using Ellipsis, or I'm going to go back and stick to my Word document. But let's try how Ellipsis is, since it's a free software. And for the plotting and character arcs and stuff like that, I'm going to follow a simple Excel sheet which would let me connect different things. Yeah, I don't know how long it is going to take. I'm pretty sure it will not be done in one day, because rereading through 16 chapters, and I'm going to stop myself from editing as much as possible, because I don't want to line edit at this point of stage, because this is just my first draft. But if I can't help it, and if while rereading I find something like very funny, or just doesn't belong in that book at all, if I feel something like that, then I'm going to edit it, or at least I'm going to make a note for myself to come back and edit it. So yeah, let's see how it goes, and I'll keep you updated with the progress. I'm giving myself 1 week of time, or at least 3-4 days for this activity before I start writing the upcoming chapters. And yeah, fun times ahead. I transferred everything to my Word document, and I thought it was going to be only 40,000 words, but it has come to a grand total of 60,000 words, which I think when I reread and edit it is going to come back to my original number, maybe 40 to 45,000 words, because I just skimmed through some of the chapters when I was just transferring all my material, and I feel like a lot of my earlier writing is not up to my expectation. I literally cringed at some of my earlier chapters. So yeah, I think there might be a lot of work to do. I don't want to get into line level editing, like I said, but let's see how it goes. And I'm just going to keep it minimal. So as for ellipses, I played around with ellipses and Milanote a bit, and I have decided I'm going to keep my entire manuscript in Word because it's easier, and I'm going to use ellipses for some of my high level outlining. And like I said, I'm going to keep my Excel for planning out my arcs and stuff like that. And I'm going to use Milanote for some of my mood board creations because I feel like at this point I want to just visualize my characters and visualize some of the plot and also some of the references that I'm using, because the story, since it is kind of fantasy as well as slow reveal fantasy as well as supernatural, there are like lots of scenes, lots of places, lots of I mean there are lots of scenes, there are lots of places which hold an importance, and I just want to visualize them. And maybe when I do a revisit of it or when I do another draft revision of it, I would be able to add more to the descriptions, because right now the descriptions are good, some are not enough, but I feel like if I mean, I have a mental image of what certain scene has to look like, what a certain character has to look like, bring whatever is in my mind as a visual representation on a mood board or a picture, then I would be able to describe it more, I believe. I don't know how it's gonna go, but let's see. That's my initial idea. So this week, I believe, is going to be rather busy because I'm planning on revising, I'm planning on creating outline, and I'm also planning on creating some mood boards. Yeah, so wish me luck and I'll get back to you later. I just realized something this whole week. Writing is important, but at the same time, planning your story or planning your novel is so much more important than sitting down and actually writing a chapter one by one. So I have never plotted before, and this was the first time that I thought for my novel I will start plotting, and it has proven to be a very useful experience for me. I really like the way, so before I never gave much importance to my plot or my characters or what caused the character to act in a certain way, because it seemed to kind of naturally started to flow when I wrote chapter by chapter, and I haven't faced any major deviations from how a character would act. But the more I started writing, I wanted to try to define my characters in a more layered way. And when I start rereading the previous chapter, like I said before, it really helped me understand that some of my characters are too flat, they don't have much layers to them. So I just took this whole week to prepare an outline of all my characters, to basically define the character profiles. So I have some pretty important characters, almost 5 characters, which are like the heart of my story, and I including the MC. And still there are like few more characters which are like really important. I also want to make sure that this novel doesn't become so big with so many characters, but at the same time I want to really mold these characters in a way that everyone can resonate with them, everyone can understand them, they can easily visualize. So when I tell my main character name or one of my main 5 characters, they'll be able to actually see that person come alive on the paper. And this process of actually creating the character profile helped me to visualize them. So this week started off pretty lazy, I believe, because I had some family visiting, and I also did not have the time to write much. And as I said before, I have already decided that this week is for planning and maybe rereading my previous chapter and revising them a bit. But I didn't get time to do even that because I was traveling with family and I had kids at home. And yeah, so this week was pretty eventful, but I did get a good tool that I feel suits my needs, I would say. So when I started character profiling, I was going through many tools. I would say there's some suggested Milanote, some suggested Miro for mapping your characters, and it also has some pretty decent outlines that you could follow, or templates that you could pick from. But when I started using Obsidian, it was like a second brain map to me because you don't have predefined templates in Obsidian, and coming from a tech background, connecting everything through tags and visualizing it as a brain map actually was very interesting for me. So personally, I mean, there might be so many people who prefer Milanote or other tools, or even Excel to do their character profiles, and at the end of the day, it's just that you are trying to answer all the questions that might come up in a reader's mind about a character. Say, for example, what causes them to behave this way, what might be their backstory. So, or when it comes to personality traits, like what is their signature move, or what is their signature mannerism, or even small things like hair color, eye color, or whatever it is. And you also move a little bit beyond that and go towards your motivation, character arc, and how do you want the character to travel in through the whole book. And so that's really what you're trying to build. But having a tool to actually capture all this and answer these questions and keep it handy so that you can go and refer to it when you are doing your writing, and when you are drafting, or even when you are revising your drafts, will help you a lot. And with Obsidian, I found that the backlinking, tagging and backlinking features to be very useful for me, and also to create a canvas with all the multiple notes, and then where I can have all the characters in a single page, and then I can search through them, and when I link the character name in any other document or in any of my draft, I could just click on the link and then travel back to the character profile that I have written and then reference it. And even I could jot down important scenes, or maybe things that are really, I just don't want to, I almost said something and I didn't want it to be a spoiler, but things that are really important, or the vein of your story, and it has to remain connected to every action that each character performs. Then things like that, you can actually add it as notes. It's a simple collection of notes in a folder, but basically in Obsidian you maintain something called a vault, and then you can make these links and interlinks which help you to organize your thoughts. So the basic use of Obsidian is there, and it is offline, and you also have a sync feature which will allow you to sync it to other devices. I think, although I haven't used that yet, I'm currently using it with my laptop, and so far it has been really nice. And I have used only very little features in it. I think once I start using it, I'll be finding more features. But I don't want to get engulfed or immersed into using the various features in the app, rather than actually, the point of this is to plan my novel and not find out how many useful features can apply to a novel building phase in Obsidian. So I have to keep that in mind, because whenever I come across a new tech or a new software, it just becomes my second nature to kind of play around and explore, and then waste lots and lots of hours. I wouldn't say waste, but still like spend lots and lots of hours on it. So that happened this week, and like I said, I'm on my journey to actually define my characters. So basically this week has all been about defining my characters, and then rereading some of my chapters. I also found something else when I was building my characters from scratch. Not from scratch, but I know defining my characters more. I also understood that the plot, how I wished for it to go before, I don't think I want to follow the same. Now, the chapters that I have written so far, I might need to include more scenes in order to make it a little bit coherent in introducing some of the characters, because otherwise it will be like info dumping at the end, or introducing so many characters at the end. I still want to figure out a way to give a outline of all the characters, not all the characters, but at least give a glimpse of the characters that I want to introduce in the beginning of the book, because I feel like there is one or two characters that I haven't introduced yet, and they're going to be very important later in the story. And since I have written almost 16 chapters, almost around 60,000 words, it's too late to introduce them right now, because otherwise the manuscript is going to be very long. And I also understand that the 60,000 word count so far is going to change drastically, because I'm going to tear apart the chapters so far and then going to rebuild them in a way that there might be a lot of things that I might be omitting. There might be a lot of additions. So yeah, let's come to that when the writing process actually starts. So right now I'm in the phase of character building and my world building. I also wanted to talk about one more thing. So I have picked up the Save the Cat novel. So yeah, I also started reading this book, which is also helping me in shaping the characters, defining the motives of the character, and defining the story structure, or defining the character arc. So let's see how far we are going to go with that. So yeah, that's my update for this week. I know we have talked about my work so far for the past week and how I have been using Obsidian and the character profiling. I have been working for some hours now, so a couple of hours now, and I feel like it's a really exciting phase right now for me to be building these characters, and I find myself getting immersed into it more and more. So I think I'm going to be doing the same for maybe another week, because this might sound like I'm taking a lot of time, but I'm working full-time. I'm working a full-time job, so there is very little time for me to spend for writing. And despite that, I want to concentrate on my writing this year and maybe complete the first draft of the novel by the end of this year, and maybe start revising or editing by the start of next year. I don't know about publishing, or whether this will ever get published, or will I go to that. And the motive or the drive for me is just to get this story on paper, even if it is just for me, or just my friends, or I don't know if anyone will be interested. But at the end of the day, I want to see this story, see this novel on paper. And yeah, so I feel like I have to come up with a writing schedule next, if I'm going to take this very seriously, since I started defining my characters, and since I started revising. And last month, if you have seen my first video, you know that I have written 10,000 words since last month. But after I started taking this seriously and working on my novel from scratch, or from chapter 1, I haven't written anything yet. So it's all defining my character, world building, and that sort of stuff. I haven't started writing anything this week at all. Even maybe I have revised a couple of chapters, that's it. And not even a couple of chapters, just one chapter, the prologue alone. I have revised the prologue alone. Yeah, and I feel like the tone of the main character is changing a lot from how I defined him before. So yeah, I don't know, I kind of like the new version of my main character, but let's see how it goes. Yeah, anyway, I have also been reading a lot of books, some on my Kindle, some physical books. But yeah, I just need to find a schedule to have allocated time for everything, because right now my mind is everywhere. There is no schedule, and I'm literally doing things that I want to do at any time. I don't have a proper schedule that I stick to, and I want to change that in the next week, hopefully, and have a proper writing schedule, even if it is for building my characters, even if it is for world building. I just want to get on to a schedule, so that my mind gets used to the idea that every day these hours are dedicated for my writing, and these hours are dedicated for my reading, and the rest of the hours I can do whatever I want. Not whatever I want, I can spend on my full-time job, which is my bread and butter. And yeah, so let's see how it goes. We are hoping to get a writing schedule from next week, and yeah, let's see how it goes. If you have reached this part of the video, then I want to thank you for taking your time to listen to all my ramblings, although they don't make any sense right now. Even in my head, sometimes it doesn't make any sense, but I feel like I'm starting to fall into a routine, or things start making sense inside my head. So if you guys have any tips for me, or if you are interested in following along the journey, then thank you. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening to all my ramblings, I guess. See you in another video. Bye.